Hello everyone, my name is Patcha and welcome back to another episode of Tiergarten Edelwald, where in this episode, and you can already see that in the background, we are gonna build for the wild water buffalo. Yeah, I think that's the name in game, the wild water buffalo, which is of course a buffalo species, a bovine species from Asia, more specifically from I think Southeast Asia, but also they are found in China. They are very much found a lot in India, and which is a bit of a strange case because wild water buffaloes aren't really held in zoos. There might be zoos in India, I think, that house them, but usually you don't display them in zoos because they are super rare. I think there are not even real estimates of how many wild water buffaloes are even exist anymore in the wild. The reason for that being the domesticated water buffalo, which is the species you usually find in zoos, and which is also the species that causes a little bit of the downfall of the wild water buffalo because they breed with them, they murky the DNA waters of that species, and since they are so similar to each other, scientists and biologists are sometimes not even really sure if the DNA samples they have are from the wild variant or the domesticated variant. It is a whole thing that, if you see a water buffalo, it's usually to 99% is the domesticated variant. So that is what we are also going to refer them as here in our zoo of Edelwald. These, despite the game saying they are white water buffaloes, we just see them as domesticated water buffaloes, because they're super similar. I know there are some differences in morphology, so how they look, and experts know and can distinguish them. I can't. I also guess most people and most guests in the zoo can't. So we just say they are domesticated water buffaloes, similar to what they are in the real zoo of Schönbrunn, where this habitat is inspired of. And interestingly, in Schönbrunn they even have a specific breed of water buffalo. At least it is referred as a breed. It's not really, so you can't really find anything about it, but they referred, I found that on Zootierliste, the webpage, if you want to find out what species are held at a zoo. It's Zootierliste. And there they are listed as West Hungarian water buffaloes, which isn't really a breed, but more so is where these buffaloes come from, which is the western parts of Hungary, in Europe, and that's where they are most commonly found. And that is what is displayed in the real zoo of Schönbrunn. In my zoo here in Edelwald, they are just domesticated water buffaloes or wild buffaloes, but anyway, in the end, it comes down to the same thing, wild water buffaloes, which we got with the wetlands pack, I think 2 years ago, 3 years ago even. I think 3 years ago is all mixing in my head when certain DLCs released. It's such a ride, has been such a ride for the last 6 years. So many animals, so many packs, I don't even know anymore which animals came when. But they released with the wetlands pack, which is one of the best packs you ever got, one of the best animal packs you ever got, with capybaras, with Nile Lechwe, with, I think we also got the red-crowned crane in there, and one of them was, the biggest one in there was the wild water buffalo, and I never really got around building for them, despite me finding them really, really cool. They have the biggest horns in all of the wild bovids, not counting Watusi cattle, for example, which are, of course, a human breed of cattle, or a human-made breed of cattle. But in all of the wild cattle, they have the longest and biggest horns, which is impressive. They're not the biggest bovine, but they have the biggest horns. They look really cool. They look really impressive. They are such a cool animal that lives in the wetlands of Asia and now all over the world. So they also play a huge part in the ecosystem, grazing down on grass areas and creating new wetlands, things like that. So they are really important for the environment. So it's a really cool species, and I'm happy to finally be able to build for this, because this build also finally connects our Rhino Park build with the rest of the zoo. The Rhino Park is just to the right of this build. To the left we have the Somali wild donkey from last week's episode, and now finally my gamble with the Rhino Park, building it far away from the rest of the zoo, finally paid off, and they are connected now. It doesn't look weird anymore. We just have an empty area in the middle that we will fill out over the next episodes, and then we have a complete zoo, at least in that area of the park. And speaking of the next episodes, I already mentioned it in last week's episode with the donkeys, and I want to mention it here again. Why we are building now the first of the 2 backstages, similar to the donkey one. We will have 2 backstages, one being for the males, for the bulls, and one for the general backstage for the animals, so that we can separate the bulls if you, for example, are not breeding, or if they are a bit more of an aggressive nature. Here we are building the backstage for the bulls, for the water buffalo bulls. Then we are also gonna build a second one. What I was talking about is that over the next weeks, after this video releases, for the next 2 months coming after this video, videos will not release as regular as they used to be. So every week you get 1 video. That has to change for the next 2 weeks. Reason for that is my real life job as a teacher, which requires me for the next 2 months to spend a little bit more time also in my free time, which is not sadly, but what comes when you're as a teacher. You don't just work in school, you also have to work from home to prepare lessons and things like that, lectures. So I have to spend a little bit more time in my free time working for my real job as a teacher, which means I don't have as much time to record videos, to work on the videos, to cut everything, to make the voice overs and things like that, which takes a couple days. And that means that videos, at least for now, I plan to release them bi-weekly, so every other week, not every week, so every second week. And I hope that works out. If not, I will of course make an announcement and say, hey, no videos this week, reasons being X, Y, and Z, so that you know. But just be warned that videos will not be as regular as they used to be for a bit, basically. And I hope I can return to the weekly video releases after that. Just real life job comes before my hobby as YouTube, my YouTube hobby. Similar, just because this is my real life job. This brings in the money. YouTube is just my hobby, and of course this will always takes priority before that. But yeah, no, be warned. After this video next week, there won't be a video most likely, and then that will continue for the next 2 months. After that, I hope I will return to the usual schedule. So you know it now. I probably still will make an announcement in the community tab for everyone who doesn't watch this video. I know I have over 2,000 subscribers. Not everyone watches my videos, or not everyone watches every video, which is I totally can understand. So that everyone is on the known, everyone knows it, and that nobody is wondering why there is no video coming out. Just so you know what the drill is. But yeah, back to the build here. It is of course inspired again by the real zoo of Schönbrunn and their bison, their buffalo habitat. And actually this might be one of the last habitats inspired by Schönbrunn in this series. Not the last habitat in the zoo, but for the next ones, for the next habitats, I will draw inspiration from a different zoo that I visited this year. And people who follow my channel, who follow me on social media, know what a zoo that might be. And this means we are almost done with stuff from Schönbrunn. There is one more thing we have to do, which is more in the old center of the zoo that I haven't built yet, that will be from Schönbrunn, because it is already planned in as being from Schönbrunn. But Schönbrunn. But in general, this will be one of the last habitat builds. Definitely is the last habitat build, at least for now. not it's not the last, but for a while now it will be one of the last habitat builds inspired by Schönbrunn, and the next ones won't be. Which is interesting that I draw so heavily from this zoo, but finally we come to an end. The zoo is close to finish. I think I can count on one hand the things I still want to build for this project. And it's really interesting. We started, I think, last year, and since then we made a steady progress to fill out the zoos. My PC is crying about how many stuff we have built in this zoo. It's still running relatively good, but I noticed that things are slowing down. I already took out most of the animals that I'm not needed at the moment, which are not close to the project we are building at the moment. So a lot of the park is just empty habitats, simply for performance reasons. And once the zoo is finished, and when I upload this to the workshop, I will probably, at least for now, upload 2 versions, one with all the animals in and one without the animals in. But you can easily just put down all the animals you need for a certain habitat if you want to visit this zoo, if you want to look into at this zoo, because all the habitats have signs on them which tell you which animals are in the habitat, and all of the habitats, since the market gets shared and animal trading market gets shared when you upload a zoo. All the animals that I have in the trading market are there. You can just select them, put them in the habitat, and then this will be filled out. But simply for performance reasons, because I know not everyone has a super strong PC, and I want to make it for everyone able to experience the zoo, to look around, to take inspiration, took some things out, maybe continue building it, or do something totally different with it. So I will probably upload it without all of the animals in. Maybe some key features, some key animals will stay in. But yeah, that's at least the plan I have in mind now. I will see how it changes once everything is in, how the performance is going then. It definitely got bigger than I planned, and I definitely, again, the usual Planet Zoo curse of thinking a project will be small, but that then just balloons into something totally humongous. But I would say it was worth it, because having just a zoo with 20, maybe not even 20, but 15 species or so, doesn't feel like a zoo. It feels like a small animal park, and just having a zoo where you have, I don't know, 20 species, 15 species in, and then the rest is just nature, things like that, empty space. It doesn't, for me at least, it doesn't feel like a zoo. It's not a real zoo. It's just a small animal park, a small roadside attraction. Basically, things that a zoo must have a lot of species in it, a lot of different, areas and different mixtures of species to feel like a real zoo. But yeah, again, we are building the interior. We are not building a lot of interior, but for this building, we have to build somewhat of a believable interior for this backstage we are building right now here, because of how I build the doors, or the entrances for the animals into this building, which let in some space that guests could see through. So we have to make a fake interior basically for it. As you see it here, I cut it out because it wasn't really important. I just used some of the fences that I made for my Leipzig recreation. You can find some in the workshop if you want to. There are backstage fences that are used all over the European continent, at least. I saw them in a couple zoos, so they're very versatile for all sorts of backstages, and I used them here to create this fake backstage area basically that guests would see, so it doesn't look like it's just isn't empty inside it. But I will put more detail into it simply to reduce the piece count. I think I repeat that in every other video now, that I don't build backstages if they are not necessary. If guests can't see the backstage, why should I include it? It doesn't develop, or it doesn't enhances your experience of the zoo, just for someone who looks at all the backstage things then of course, but in general it just saves pieces. And I also had to change a little bit the layout of this habitat, because you will see that in the next chapter there's also, of course, a water basin, because the water buffalo, as the name suggests, is a very aquatic species of bovid. They like to spend a lot of the days in mud pools, in water pools. They just love to swim and be in the wet environment. And this habitat, or in the original, features also a water pool, but it was a little bit smaller than I like to. It was split between a land part with a moat, which we already built, and then water pool, and then another land part with a moat, a smaller one. And I just skipped the second land area, moat area, and included it into the pool to make the pool in general bigger, to just give the buffaloes a little bit more water space, basically, to make it more happy, makes them happy for them. They have a large land area, basically, and now they also have a large pool area, which looks very, I think, since I follow the design of the Reels of Schönbrunn, it looks very oldish. It is very, how you would build water areas or water pools, basically. Pools, not water pools, are pools. How you have been building pools in the olden days for zoos, in the more functional days, where you have a lot of concrete, a lot of stone, a lot of tiles, basically, a lot of drainage systems that we are building here right now. This is supposed to be the drainage system, which water flows in to be recycled and then pumped back out, which is something you don't really see today. Today you have a lot of natural materials. You have mud walls, you have fake stone walls to make it look more of like natural, and here it still looks very much functional. It's very, you see that it is man-made. Of course in the zoo everything is man-made usually, but you can see that it is a man-made pool, that it was constructed. It features a lot of concrete and stone and these drainage canals, and so it looks artificial. I think that's what I want to go for. I was searching for, it looks artificial more so than any other modern pool, basically, which tells you that this habitat and the other ones next to it have been built quite a while ago. They are not the most modern standards for these types of habitats. They are very similar to all the ungulate row habitats that you see in a lot of zoos, where you have these very plain habitats that suit the needs of the animals inside, usually ungulates, gazelles, buffaloes in this case, or horses, which suits the need. You have a lot of stone, you have a lot of brickwork, basically, a lot of concrete work, and they suit the needs. The animals are still happy, but they're not the most natural habitats, basically. And this habitat is kind of a mixture. We have this more artificial pool over here, which I colored green to simulate that it is very full of moss and other plants that have grown in here, which are just not, they're just not just worth cleaning it out. It also helps the buffaloes because they can feed on these mosses if they like to. And then you have other parts of the habitat which are a bit more natural. You try to work with natural substrates, which we'll see later on in the decoration part. And you have some plants in there. You have some more natural feelings like rocks and trunks, or tree trunks and other wood things, to make it feel a bit more natural. But you still can see that this was originally a very plain habitat, just to showcase the animal, not to replicate the natural environment of that animal, which we could, for example, see in the Peccary build, basically, which tried to replicate the desert environment of these animals. And we also have these steps which they can walk on. I tried, they can go into the pool. You probably also maybe saw it in the promotional pictures if I managed to capture a buffalo being in there. Here we are also placing water, simply because to prevent the mud pools from altering the environment. This is a little tip if you want to do. If you want to sink in mud pools in a certain degree, and it always brings down the rest of the terrain around it, because that is how enrichment pieces work. Place water, because water prevents terrain alterations, and so we can keep the moat here, but still place these mud pools, a place where these mud pools would form, or where you would have the mud pools made by the keepers with water, because it's the lowest point, so the water goes there, and creates mud. I think nothing much I need to talk about that. But I think that is everything I wanted to talk about in this episode. We are nearing up the plant section, the foliage section. There's not much foliage in this habitat, similar to the one from the Mali wild donkey. The whole habitat is pretty much barren because these buffaloes would eat all the foliage in there. We are creating here, as I said, a natural substrate using some of the path pieces to have this more the different substrate basically. On the other side, we also have a sand pit. All these different undergrounds help the buffalo experience new feelings on their feet, on their hoofs, I would say, and just create a little bit of different textures, a little bit of different enrichment for the animals in the habitat, just not always having the plain walk down earth area. So it really can help to also create a little bit of different eye catchers for the guests if you have different substrates in the habitat and the animals are using these different substrates to stimulate themselves. But yeah, we are now, as I said, nearing the decoration part, the fine decoration part of the habitat, which also means I will leave you now to the rest of the speed build with some music, and then I will see you at the end of the speed build, where we look at the finished habitat in its totality and see how it ended up and how it developed over time. Alright, and here we are now in our real-time part as usual. And before we look at our new water buffalo area, we have to do some naming as usual. First one coming from that Aussie bloke who finally managed to name all the wallabies, and the last one he suggested we should name Canberra. Now we have to find the last one. This one is Brisbane, this is Hobart, Steve Irwin, Ngara I think is the last one. So we name him Canberra, and now all the redneck wallabies have been named. Yeah, that Aussie bloke definitely made it. Second one coming from Bacon Bit Builder, who suggested we should name the female anteater Janet after Janet Van Dyne. Of course, we named the male one Hank after Hank Van Dyne, Ant-Man, and now we name the female one Janet Van Dyne, which is I think his wife. In the MCU. And then the last one comes from Kalufra, who suggests we should name off the female capybaras Mabel. No reason given, so we just do it, and that is now Mabel. So with that out of the way, we can now jump over here to our new exhibit over here next to the donkeys. I also created this little this little dent over here with a bench, so guests can sit here and enjoy the animals. But this is now our wild buffalo, or more say our water buffalo, domesticated water buffalo exhibit. As I said, it's very barren because the animals would destroy all the plants that they can have access to. We have some little grass poking up here and there on the edges, but in general it's a very barren habitat, complemented by the foliage around it. And first, of course, we have our first viewing area over here with the moat, with the mud pits where they can roll around to get rid of parasites. Yeah, I hear you. I hope they're not too loud. And we also have, of course, a little of the different undergrounds over here with the leaves over there and the sandpit over there. And we also see the male backstage in the background and behind all the enrichment items. And then if you go over here, is our rhino park, and then over here we have the second backstage and their water pool, which I think really turned out really nicely. I hope they will go in there at some point. They should be able to. The heat map also shows that they should be able to, but I really like how this pool is framed by all these plants and trees, especially by the weeping willows which dip down into the water. Gives it a really tropical feeling despite being so artificial. So I really like how it turned out, and you can also see the backstage a little bit in the background, which is I think always a nice touch to see the works behind the scenes basically, as well as you can see into the backstage over here. Almost. A little dip with the toes, maybe it's not warm enough, the water, maybe I have to change that. But yeah, this is our water buffalo, not wild buffalo, our water buffalo exhibit for our animals over here. Really like how it turned out. It is barren, but it still feels not empty. It doesn't feel too deserty basically. It fits these animals, so I really love how everything worked out. And this means I now say goodbye to you all, and I hope I see you in the next video in 2 weeks, as I said. And until then, I hope you have a great time, you stay safe, and bye bye everyone.